Welcome, everyone, to the Insurance Perspectives podcast. This is part one of our series on ClaimSetter. On today's show, we have Torry Wilcox
Hello, good to be here.
and Elnor Rozenrot.
Thanks a lot for having me. Hi.
As is our custom, Torry will receive a full introduction in part two. To give a little context to how he'll contribute to the conversation, Torry is the principal broker and business insurance advisor at Insure Pro, based out of Draper, Utah. He founded Insure Pro in 2009 after a 6-year career at Farmers Insurance. Elnor, on the other hand, is the CEO of ClaimSetter. Elnor is an entrepreneur with deep experience in the financial technology space and the credit card space. He founded ClaimSetter in March of 2023 out of a frustration when he saw friends and family suffering pain and delay in the insurance claims process, which we'll dive a lot more into in a moment. Prior to ClaimSetter, Elnor was the founder and CEO of Jasper, a consumer credit card. He is also a frequent traveler, and I don't think I've ever caught him in the same city twice. And this might be actually the first time I've talked to him where he's at his actual home base. So I wanted to maybe throw a little softball question, which could be controversial, I guess. But what was the last great city you visited?
There's an inherent danger in answering this question because I do travel a lot and there's a chance that I'll be hunted down in the other places. Last week, I was in a tour of the Midwest, and I have to say that I was surprised, very positively surprised by Omaha, Nebraska, for instance. I came in expecting sort of a small Midwest town, and as I was spending an evening there, I discovered that there's much more to do than I anticipated. From the last week, Omaha, Nebraska.
Excellent. So then let's dive into the Midwest. They would call the meat and potatoes of this interview. Elnor, I'd love if you could start us out with the elevator pitch for ClaimSetter. What do you guys do for an insurance agency?
The short version of it is that we make property claims go much faster and much easier for everyone involved. So if you think about the customer experience, the actual insured, when a claim happens, beyond the fact that they're confused, and this is probably the first time that it's happening to them in their lives, so obviously they don't know what they're doing, they're facing, at the very least, a 16-stage process in order to get to the other side of the claim. Whether it's gathering all the materials, finding a contractor, chasing the money, chasing the mortgage. There's a lot of different pieces, and each one of them is new and confusing, and each one of them serves to provide safety to the different players in the space. So what we do is we take that entire complex process and turn it into basically a 3-stage process. Work with us, choose a contractor, define the scope of work you want, and at the end of the day, just give us a thumbs up that you're happy with the quality. In a nutshell, that's what we do. And I can talk about this for hours more if you give me the space. So,
we'll definitely have the space here in a moment, but I appreciate that as the setup so people can kind of contextualize this as we dive into it. For context for our listeners, we ask all of our partners the same 5 questions so that we can help build a comparable set of answers any independent insurance professional can use to evaluate a technology provider or a service provider for their business. At HawkSoft, we really believe that the fundamental component of picking someone to work with is their story, the story of the company or the story of the individual, because ultimately we're people working together. Even if we're a technology company and Elnor represents a company that leverages technology for an easier process, we're not just computers or cyborgs talking to each other, we're people. And at the foundation of that is understanding who each other is and finding the commonality or finding a piece that resonates with us. So we like to start with our very simple question: why does ClaimSetter exist? And I alluded to some of the background in my introduction for Elnor about the genesis of the idea. And I'd like to start there because I think there's a lot of power in the ClaimSetter story. So Elnor, what inspired ClaimSetter to come into existence?
It's a very personal story, but essentially, my own personal journey. I was founder and CEO before this of a consumer credit card company. And when I finished my tour with that company, after doing that for about 9 years, I started thinking about the next thing I wanted to do, and I was spending time with a friend of mine in New Hampshire, of all places, where I live. He told me this horror story about a claim that he had. The short version was he had a claim, he had an event, he submitted a claim, the claim was adjusted within about 7 days, but for some reason he didn't get money for 8 months. Now, as a credit guy and as a human, but definitely as a credit guy, this just didn't make any sense to me. Because you have, on the one hand, you have an insurance company, it's a great credit rated organization, right? You have an insurance company committed to pay, but then you have a customer scrambling, talking to banks about getting loans to pay the contractors, uh, just to be able to get through. So I got very curious, and I went and talked to a whole lot of people within the industry. I talked to chief claims officers, to claims adjusters, to contractors, to customers, to agents, and everybody I talked to um, described pain, described a very, very painful process. Every time I talked to them, I sort of half joke that whenever I asked people about the process, they'd always start with this very deep sigh. There was this,
Mm,
well, let me tell you, and the key thing that came up for me through these conversations is that there's just complete lack of trust between the
mm,
different entities here, between the carrier and the broker and the customer and the contractor. No one trusts anyone. Um, so what came up for me was that there's got to be a way to get everybody to focus on the problem instead of focusing on each other, the horrible
mm.
other that's trying to take me for a ride. So that's what we started ClaimSetter. The entire idea was, let's just focus on fixing this and on creating trust between all these different entities. So everybody gets exactly what they need. We're not trying to change outcomes. We're not trying to change anything. We're just trying to bring everybody together faster, essentially, in a less friction full way. And that's how we started.
Yeah, I really love that, and I appreciate the kind of organic place it comes from. And I think we see a lot of parallels between financial technology and insurance technology. So we always are like kind of like cousin businesses. Um, and I can definitely appreciate coming from that world and being like, "Oh, insurance is a little behind." But then I think even beyond that, you're more fundamental. That focus on trust and starting from like just a key principle of like, well, we're all in theory working towards protecting the insured, making them whole in the event of an accident or a loss. And so if we say like, I'm going to trust you in this process, it seems to be much smoother.
No, I completely agree. By the way, the real challenge then was, how do I, with my zero knowledge of the insurance space, actually build something that the insurance space wants to work with? That
Hmm.
was a journey in and of itself. But at the core of it, it is a question of trust. It is a question of how do we get everybody to get exactly what they need out of this, so they don't feel as if they're giving up anything. Well, they aren't actually giving up anything, but they're not creating barriers that make it really, really hard for everyone else to get what they need out of this.
Hmm. I'm really tempted. Normally, I would wait until the next question to prompt Torry to come in here. But Torry, I'd love to know, you're a real live insurance agent, and you've been in this business for quite some time. If we, I want to set aside bringing ClaimSetter on because we'll talk about that a lot in part 2 next week. But how how do you react to that story that we heard Elnor talk about, a claim taking 8 months to pay out? Is that something that you as an agent have experienced yourself?
Yeah, I mean, over the past, I would say 5 to 10 years, I feel like claims, the experience, the time has only gotten longer and
Hmm.
harder. And, um, I feel like at the end of the day, my clients that do have a claim are either going to have a subpar experience or a horrific experience. There's no like good experience
Hmm.
coming from the claims. So, yeah, totally can resonate with that.
Yeah, and I think it is one of those bonding things where you can, the saying, the common saying is, the only two things that are guaranteed in life are like death and taxes. I think that if you are a business owner, or if you just own a car that's newer than 2010, you've probably had a rough claims experience.
Yeah.
So then I want to really get into the ClaimSetter within an agency and or the functions of ClaimSetter. And you're kind of unique in the space. So normally I would queue this question up and say, there's multiple services that do this kind of thing, and they all have to do a certain amount of the same functionality. But you guys are rather unique. You're the one I've encountered, and the one that I think is doing it in the most unique and probably right way. Nevertheless, it's important to our audience to understand the key factors that make using ClaimSetter stand out from the standard approach. And in this case, that's either handling that claim in-house or deferring the responsibility to the carrier. My second question for you, Elnor, is if you had to pick one aspect of what ClaimSetter does that draws in and keeps an agency working with you, what would that be?
I think it's really a balance between two things. One is the vast majority of insurance agents that I know came into this space, yes, because it's a good living, but also because they have this fundamental desire to actually help people. And they come in and they make all of these promises, right? You know, when something happens, I'm going to be here. Here's a policy that's going to cover you. Here's how we've got you. Here's how I've got your back. Here's how the carrier that I work with has your back. And when a claim happens, the desire, the innate desire that I see in most of the times is I want to be there and help, you know, from an agent's perspective. I want to be there and help. I want to actually live up to all these promises that I made. And we all understand that there's a carrier in the process, and there's always friction. But this shouldn't be more painful than it absolutely has to be. So I think the first thing that I'd really put out there is the vast majority of agents that I talk to, the vast majority of agents that what we talk about resonates with are agents that just want to live up to that promise. You know, they made a promise, they want to live up to it. The other part is, if you think about the customer life cycle in insurance, then the vast majority of the time you're making promises. And at that point, you're competing based on your charm, your ability to do better analysis, to get a better price, to fend off other quotes that are coming in from other places. But the place where you really prove that you are the agency for life, if you will, for me as a customer, is when something happens. Because if you can provide, if you're not just throwing me over to the wolves, if you will, and letting me deal with a carrier for the next 3 years of my life on my own, then you've earned a permanent place in my life. You're actually worth paying more. You're going to be my first phone call. So if you think about a claim within that life cycle, the agencies that we partner with are ones that are, the word I like to use is obsessed with having the right customer experience. They want to make sure that when a claim happens, the customer is treated the right way. They understand the value of that to the agency, not just in terms of retention, but also in terms of upsell, in terms of being able to use that, to drive more business, whether it's reputation or whether it's just straight lead generation. Having a good claims experience is something that just moves the flywheel much better in terms of customer retention and in terms of customer acquisition. So if you're trying to build a great customer experience, you can't just have a great customer experience when you're just selling. You also have to have a great customer experience when you actually need to deliver.
There are decisions that agencies make, and I think there might be some listeners that are listening and saying, well, I'm a non-standard auto shop and I just sell. I don't think we're speaking to them right now. I think we're kind of speaking to the Main Street America agency, the community agency that is a member of the community. Is new sales is an important aspect of what they do, but also retaining that business, maintaining those relationships and bonds within their community. And I'm a huge fan of focusing on the whole client, not just the new sale, not just the renewal. How are they in between that? How are they being taken care of when there isn't an issue, but also how do I go hands on deck when there is one? Torry, from your perspective as an agent and a customer of ClaimSetter, how do you feel about Elnor's statement of value for ClaimSetter there, about it allowing you to enhance that customer experience during the claims process?
Yeah, I think it's pretty spot on. I mean, we all, I think, want or have a desire, like you said, to deliver on a promise. We want our clients to have a positive experience, but at the end of the day, it's often out of our control.
Hmm.
So we're making a promise for a carrier that we can't really deliver on based on whatever they're working on or the adjuster that's assigned or whatever the case might be. So um, having somebody to be an advocate for you is almost essential to having a client have a good experience. Yeah, I think these days. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now I want to change focus just a little bit. Data ownership is a key area of focus and advocacy for HawkSoft in the independent agency space, and it's a reason why a lot of our customers choose us as a partner for their agencies. They care about this idea that the data and information that they cultivate from their book of business, from their clientele, is theirs. They own it. Where we view ourselves as stewards. We like to ask all of our partners that come on the show, how do you approach this idea of data ownership with regards to your agency customers at ClaimSetter?
It's fairly simple. We only use data. We never share data with partners unless it's for the fulfillment of the service. So as we go through the description of how we provide the service, like I can basically point to who gets exactly what data. But the bottom line is this. We only receive claim relevant data as a claim is happening, and we solely use it towards provisioning a better experience, whether that means interacting with a contractor, whether that means interacting with an adjuster, or the agent. Obviously, we never ever use that data for anyone else. So we we rely on basically the strictest privacy regulations, whether it's the European ones, the Californian ones, whatever comes out there. But the bottom line is we never share the data with anyone that is not absolutely required towards the provisioning of the service, and we obviously never sell that data or do anything of the sort with the data that we get.
Perfect. I love when it's clean cut like that. And I think that, you talked earlier about how you have a focus on establishing trust in the process. And I think that that's something that goes a long way to engender trust within the independent agency space, is being clear and transparent about what's going to happen with the data and how it's used. And so I appreciate that you guys have that thoroughness when you go through the process and onboard someone.
Entirely. We actually have obviously our privacy policy and everything stated on our website. Anyone is welcome to go through it. Again, we come from financial services, so we're used to being very, very tight around data privacy and making sure that nothing is used in a way that it's not supposed to.
Excellent. Yeah, I always have I make the overture whenever we're talking with a financial services company that I recognize that your industry is even more strict than ours, and oftentimes we'll defer to their experience or their standard, because while insurance is highly regulated, we are still not as highly regulated as finances and the financial world. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, we'll defer to the stricter standard. We'll defer to the New York, or we'll defer to the California. Our podcast here is a dialogue between a service provider and insurance professional. It's a two-way street where we want to be able to foster a space for constructive feedback. And I always love when we have someone with a good outside perspective, fresh to the industry. I love both types of people, where we have a technology provider that maybe grows out of an agency, and so their perspective is generational. But then I think it's of equal value to take someone who is not from the industry strictly, but comes in and starts to help us undo the knot that is our industry. So, Elnor, from your perspective, going on 2 years, really diving into the insurance space, what is the hardest part of working with insurance agencies?
I think it's mostly inertia, to be honest. I mean, obviously, in every industry, you've got all sorts of people, right? Some are more, some are more aggressive, some less, some more forward-thinking, some move faster, some less. So that's completely normal. I think in insurance, there's just hundreds of years of inertia of ways to do things, and there's this insurance thing that basically covers everything, and that is the main thing to go against. So think, a lot of people, when I talk about what we do, especially in the early days, they say, "Oh, that actually sounds really interesting," and there was no actual following motion after that,
Mm.
because it's insurance, things take time, it's fine, we need to see that it's okay, that nothing blows up, it's completely expected. The other aspect, though, is, and that's something that I loved about the space, is that everybody's very open about the challenges. It's in some cases they treat the challenges as if something that's just, this is it, this is just the way life is, there's nothing we can do about it, but they're very open about the challenges. So I alluded to this earlier, but when we started down this path, I sort of looked at the problem and I said, but hold on, the insurance industry is trying to solve this problem with insurance tools, but
Mm.
actually if you use a credit tool, then it could unlock a lot of this. That was my initial approach, and I was about 40% right, by the way. Or in other words, I was wrong. So, it's very simple because, and this is something that I loved about the space. I came out with the initial thought about what the product needs to be. So I sort of put on the table, as I went and talked to various people in the industry. I put this, okay, here's a credit product that I think can solve this problem. And people were not very shy about telling me why they think this is wrong. What it doesn't accomplish, what their problem with it is, and with time and with a lot of community support, because I knew nothing about insurance, right? I still don't think I'm much of an expert. So with a lot of community support, with a lot of very smart people telling me, listen, if you do this, then that's what's going to happen, and that's never going to fly. We were able to take that and shape it
Mm.
into something that now seems to work. And as within every industry, again, there's people that are a bit slower, people that are a bit faster, but there's also people that are very, well, obsessed with
Mm.
doing the things that you're obsessed with. So, for instance, Torry specifically, one of the things that drew us to Torry, to Insure Pro, was the fact that he was already trying to do whatever he could around the claim space.
Mm.
You can find this. There are certain agencies out there that are already trying to solve this problem, and obviously there's a limit to what they can do. This is not the core part of their business. It's part of their
Mhm.
business, so the attention is divided between different things. But they're really trying to solve this. So being able to find these people, being able to start working with them, I think was the biggest solve for us. Was the biggest thing that we had to figure out. Um, Fighting through the inertia of the industry was, I think, the biggest challenge that we had to go through. And I wish I could say that we're done fighting the inertia, but we probably never will be.
Yeah. Torry, how does that resonate with you? What do you think about the inertia of our business and of our peers?
Companies have been doing the same thing for hundreds of years, right? So breaking that mold or having somebody come in from the outside with a different tool and unlocking the way things, that usually is very difficult. So I actually got to give a lot of hats off to Elnor and what he's been able to accomplish, because it is bucking the system, and a system that's been in place and fundamental for
Mhm.
a long time. So
Now, my notes say now the reverse, um, which is just a way to cue me up to say that we like to end kind of on the upswing. So the final question we have is the reverse of what I just asked. And so, Elnor, for you, what is the best part of working with insurance agencies?
First of all, there's an never-ending amount of insurance agencies out there. Let's start there. So there's a incredible amount of potential out there, and every agency is a bit different. Every agency is a bit of a unique snowflake.
Hmm.
I think, to me, it's finding these agencies that are truly enthusiastic, that are truly obsessed with providing. I keep using that word, I know, but I really do believe that it comes down to that, right? That they're truly obsessed with doing something better for their customer, whether it comes from that deep desire to actually provide, to live up to the promises that they've made, to provide the value that they did, or whether it comes from an understanding that this actually provides strategic and tactical short-term and long-term value for the agency is less important. I think finding these people is incredible, but the amount of opportunity in the space is never ending. And I think, look, at the end of the day, this might sound a bit too philosophical, but nothing is ever truly bad or truly good. Things are just the way they are. You need to figure out a way to work with them. This is the world that we operate in now. There are agents out there that are extremely open to trying new things. There are agents out there that wouldn't try a new thing even if you forced them to. And we're not forcing anyone to do anything, just for the record. So it's really about making sure there's enough potential, and there's enough potential partners to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely agree with you. I think that no problem is ever the same, and no agency is ever the same, and that's not a bad thing. I think that it gives us the opportunity. For me, it gives me the opportunity to solve problems in multiple ways and always try to bring some unique problem solving to the table. But I also think it does allow for, if you encounter an agency that's not the right fit, it's like, okay, there's going to be another one. There's going to be another agency I can help for each one that maybe has a different approach. I think we've set the table really well for part 2 next week, where we're going to dive in with Torry about how Insure Pro is utilizing ClaimSetter within their agency. Elnor and Torry, thank you so much for joining us on part 1. Thank you for watching today's episode. Click the episode description below to learn more about our guests and to view the latest podcast episode, as well as other content from HawkSoft. We appreciate you watching and hope you join us next time on the Insurance Perspectives podcast. Thank you.